Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you're tuning in from. My name's Sahil, and I'm a conference producer at Informa Connect on the HR portfolio. And I'm delighted to be hosting this interview on the platform. I'm pleased to be joined today by representatives from PROAKTIV Management Asia Limited. Allow me to introduce you to Mark Cosgrove and Jeremie Gan, who represent Generation X and Generation Z in today's workforce. Mark Cosgrove, representing Gen X, reminds us that leading Gen Z means embracing constant communication, focusing on results, and seeing loyalty differently. Jeremie Gan shows us how Gen Z can better connect with Gen X leaders by building trust, bridging humor gaps, and communicating with purpose. Together, they prove that when generations meet with empathy and a little patience, workplaces get a whole lot stronger. So let's jump straight into it, guys. Um, hello, Jeremie and Mark.
Hello, hello.
Hi, good to see you. Good to be here.
Good to meet you guys virtually. How are you guys doing today?
It's good. We were just saying, everyone's in different time zones. So, for Mark, it's the beginning of the day. For me, I'm winding down and it's the close to the end of my day.
Yeah. So doing pretty good. It's finally the weather. I'm in Toronto this week visiting family. So finally the weather's starting to pick up here. So it's going up to a balmy 22 degrees today. So we're very pleased about that.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for being with us here today. So I'm going to get started. So here we go. What did we learn from COVID about flexible work, and does it still apply?
I'll start off with that one. For me, I think what we learned from COVID was it works, or it can work. It has a place. I think, 20 years ago, flexible work was very rare. But, we started to tease it out with things like, one boss managing a team that's across many geographies. That was a kind of flexi work in a way. And then, salespeople quite often weren't working in the office very much. They were out on the road. In the old days, it was a salesperson in their car and off to the vendors or off to the clients rather. So I think it does work. It can work. It has a place in business. And I guess the second half is, does it still apply? I think the answer has to be nuanced. Not every job, not every industry, and not in every place, but many of us, we can get a lot out of working virtually. I mean, right now I'm in Toronto. Jeremy's back at the home office in Singapore, and we're still managing to make things work. We're still on calls like this, dealing with clients. Some of our clients are in Europe. Some of them are in Asia. So we still manage to make that work. And so why can't we make it work with people's individual jobs? So I'd say, yeah, it still does apply if we have the open-mindedness. I think the rush back to the office is driven by counterproductive things in some ways.
Yeah. I think for me, it just shows and highlights how trust cannot be micromanaged. And it really showcases how, soft skills are as important as hard skills because ultimately people just care about the value. So as long as you can show that you can still deliver everything, it's fine. And then it really shows which organizations micromanage and which organizations actually take the effort to create a culture, that allows for pockets of open conversation, clear goal setting. Hey, let's have a one-on-one on Teams, Like, for example, me and Mark, we always make it a point every Monday morning. Let's just hop on a call. Let's just talk, even if we have nothing to catch up on. The fact that we allow for such an instance to happen, really, this kind of meeting, shows that, yeah, the communication is there.
Amazing. Different perspectives, but pretty much the same on both sides. Ooh, really well done. Did you guys rehearse this before you got on?
No, we're just we're in sync. We're in sync on a few things. We argue about other things. Don't worry, we'll get to those later. I'm sure. He's
Amazing. Okay. So moving forward, what makes a nuanced work from home plan effective today? And how can leaders explain it in a way that resonates with their teams?
go ahead, Jeremy. Let's. I'm
Yeah.
curious what you have to say about it.
Well, so this one was something that I got during my time because I did work with Apple before. And so one of the things that we all learned was something called the Apple Steps of Service. And so it's pretty much an open secret already. But when you go into the shops and, when you look around, that's how you kind of get to see. So A is for approach, P is for probe, the other P is for position, L is for learn, E is for extend. And so the two things that really would apply to make a nuanced work from home work is actually the learn and the position. So for positioning, right, the employer, I feel, needs to be able to position to the team and tell the team, hey, this is why person A will have a slightly different workflow from person B. And if the leader, if the manager is not able to communicate that across to the team will basically not understand why person A had a different working arrangement to begin with. And then the other one, it's really like learning. So that's the L. So that one is both by the employer and by the rest of the team members. So if you're the manager, it is your responsibility to learn and understand the individual demands of every single team member you have. And as a team member, it's also responsible. You have the responsibility as well to learn, the individual backgrounds of every single team member. Because if you don't learn about them, then you might not understand why person A prefers to work at night or why person B prefers to work really early in the morning. So it's the same thing. And I used to be a dancer, so it's kind of like if I raise my left arm up right now, from your point of view, you might think it's my right arm. And even though it's a mirror image thing, right? So sometimes you kind of have to flip and look at it through the lens of someone else, really the learning part of it.
Yeah, and I agree most with what Jeremy said. I have a slightly cynical view of, I think, the work from home versus, the back to the office. I mean, it really is less about work from home now. The conversation has shifted to the, BTO, back to the office movement. And I think the mistake that a lot of leaders are making are they're explaining it by using reasoning that people can kind of see through. They talk about, oh, it's for culture and it's for, improved work and efficiency. And there's no statistics to back that up. Or they're saying, oh, young workers need it because it's better for their socialization and they become, for their mentorship and things like that. And these are things I don't think a lot of companies have spent a lot of time thinking about in other contexts, but they're trying to use that to kind of bring people back. And I think a more straightforward conversation, is necessary where people kind of really say what's going on. Because if you think about it, being in the office and being able to, pop into someone's room and say, "Hey, Sahil, I have a question about the thing." That's great. That absolutely is a value of working in the same shared physical space. Um, I'm not ever gonna. I mean, I do it too. And yet, there are other jobs and other people in other contexts where that's actually an annoyance. Like if I'm designing a program, right? I do training and development. So if I'm in the middle of customizing a program for my client, I'm in the zone. I don't need Jeremy popping in and going, "Hey, boss, can I ask you a question?" It's like, I've lost my train of thought, and so sometimes we need one thing and sometimes we need the other. And it goes back to the earlier question or the earlier part of the question, which is about nuance. What do people need and when do they need it? And if we're promising people something if they come back to the office, then I think that we need to deliver. So if we're saying being back in the office, creates a better work environment and a better culture, awesome. Then let's see us do some work about that. And again, I get a bit cynical. I'm 55. I've been around and been told too many things by bosses that turned out to not be true. But people say, "Oh, Jamie Dimon said this. We have to get back. People can't work from home. It's not efficient. It's not efficient." So I saw a tweet in response where somebody said, "Okay, then I'm giving back my laptop. I want a desktop computer, and I'm leaving my cell phone in the office when I go home at 6. Because if it's not efficient for me to work at home between 9 and 6, then it's certainly not efficient for me to work at home at 7, 8, 9, 10 at night when my boss, email me." Right? It's like, so you can't say we're doing this because it's not efficient. That's not nuance. That you're hitting people with a sledgehammer, and unfortunately, they can see through that. I think anyone who's been in a job for more than 10 minutes recognizes there are other reasons. And I'm a big believer in just being honest. Like, hey, we want people back in the office because that's what works for our organizational structure. Some people will always be in the office. Receptionist is receptioning right here. So that person needs to be here all the time. Salesperson, I don't ever want you in the office. You need to be out there meeting clients. If I see you sitting at your desk, I'm not making money. And that's the nuance, right? And if we just have a really straightforward conversation, I think people will get it. There's a reason they're always there and there's a reason they're never there. And the rest of us work somewhere in between. So for example, see, like if you had the big chunk of work to do, that you had a big deliverable, I think it'd be the best thing for you to just go home, be available for emergencies only, but otherwise put your head down and get the work done, as opposed to sitting in the office dealing with open concept noise, people interrupting and things like that. So, and I think we also, the last piece I'll add too, and this is something Jeremy kind of a little bit pointed at, which is generational. Different generations require different amounts and different kinds of communication. People say younger workers need that connection to grow themselves as people. But also younger workers are 1,000 times more comfortable doing everything on their phone anyway. I mean, texting. I don't mean actually on their phone. I don't think any Gen Z has actually answered a call on their phone in ever. But so they're more comfortable with that. So for them, I don't think it's something that's missing. So that's what I'd say about it.
No, I think I'm definitely inclined to agree just because I come from that generation, the millennial one anyway.
Oh, so you're the one in
In the middle. I mean, just before this, I, wasn't used to at home working. But as most generations will have to as we move forward, adapt. I think an adaptability is the word that we all need to kind of take into our dictionaries, whether it's adapting from top down or bottom up.
Absolutely. The world's going to change us, so we got to adapt to it.
100%. 100%. Shifting gears here a little bit. Will digital tools and AI, now the big word of the day, or rather this year, will digital tools and AI enhance or erode how we connect, lead, and make decisions at work?
For me, the answer is yes. It will both enhance and erode, depending on how we apply it. I think it's like everything else. AI is a tool. Did email make things better or worse? Both, depending on how we used it. Did any technology that's come along? Now, I think this one has the chance of doing more of it, and doing it more, making change more profound. But how people think about it, how they interact with it, the decisions that they make about it within the organizations, I think that's what's going to make the difference. I'm old enough to remember when we first got websites, Web 1.0, and the number of managers said, "Hey, we need a website." Why? I have no idea, but everyone else has got a website. Put up a website. And fine, and everyone did. And then we figured out what should be there and what shouldn't and how it should look and all this kind of stuff. And eventually we settled on, a protocol for what a corporate website looks like, for example. And I think AI will get there as well. I think right now we're in the stage of, hey, Dave got an AI, I want one too. And we don't quite know what to do with it. We don't know how to implement it. And most of it's being implemented like client facing. So you ask questions of your phone company or your bank or whatever, or your airline. But I think we do need to think about how are we going to use AI to lead, not just how do we lead when we're implementing AIs, but rather, can I use AI to be a better manager? Is there some way I could use ChatGPT to improve my skills as a leader and a manager? And I really think it's about, again, let AI do the boring stuff. Let AI do the stuff that takes too much time, or the stuff you're not particularly good at. And you do the stuff you are good at. And inevitably, that's the HI aspect, the human intelligence. So, I sent out an email today and I needed a title for the email, and I wanted it to have more than just a, introductory meeting or something. And I asked ChatGPT, I said, what's a good title for this meeting? And I described the meeting I was going to. And in a second, it gave me 5 options. I picked one and I used it. I'm like, okay, cool. That makes me communicate more clearly. And I'm not going to faff about on my computer, just trying to come up with a slightly catchy title. So that kind of stuff. Or, oh, hey, I want to email Jeremie and tell him he did a good job on that thing. Here's the 3 points I want to make. ChatGPT, write me an email. Now, it's still me that's acknowledging Jeremie. It's still me that's thinking about what to say, but it means I don't have to be the wordsmith. I don't have to, craft an email. So stuff like that, I think, is just a couple of quick examples. But if we think about using AI, and like when I say think, I mean really think, like sit down with a bunch of smart people and have a conversation about who we are as a company, what are we trying to do, what's the AI for, what can it do, what can it not do, and then we implement it thoughtfully, I think we'll be fine. So that's my feeling on it. So yes, and other people will use AI in the worst possible way. And the last thing I'll say about that is, if you want examples of that, look at the number of companies that have used AI to filter resumes of applicants. And there's some pretty bad horror stories of how that can go really, really badly wrong. So we have to be thoughtful about how we do this and think about it and really try to make something good.
I'm gonna agree with Mark on this. So this is, yes, one of the times where, we both agree on it. I really see AI as kind of like an accelerator. Like if it's gonna be good, it's gonna accelerate and make it really good, really fast. And if it's bad, it's gonna accelerate and make it really bad, really fast. So like for me, how I see it is like decisions, because going back to the question, connect, lead, make decisions. For decisions, it really accelerates my decision making. So I'm in charge of all the social media platforms for the APAC region here. So as a growth manager, growth marketing, what I do is I just have a prompt, and my framework, it's the grow framework. So I would be like, G, my goal. So I'll be like, hey, I need a high level marketing plan. And then O would be like, sorry, R would be restrictions. So like, hey, I only have this amount of budget. I can't go on certain platforms. I only have this market that I have to reach. And then O, my objective, my click-through rate. I would love if it's a consistent 7% every time. I want to grow engagement levels, not so much followers for this round. And then W, it's like what I call word vomit, but it's just context. So then I'll be like, oh my God, and so on, and I end up just talking like as though I'm talking, chatting with a friend over coffee, going like, oh yeah, I have this plan. I don't know how to do this plan and stuff. And it comes out with like the framework. And then from there, I can base off that framework, refine it, tweak it, add the human element to it, and it helps with my decision. But then the flip side of that is the connection. So a lot of times we see people use AI, and they use AI to replace everything. And when it comes to connection, that's when things start to erode. In this day and age, we all know everyone has like perfect resumes. Like everyone has resumes that hit every single keyword, that the ATS system will love you and stuff like that. So the first time actually, and sometimes the only time that you get to have the human connection with the candidate is in the interview, because that's when you speak on video, you get to see, the faces and stuff like that.
And people are trying to use AI for that now. That's the problem. That's
Posting up on TikTok. The number of videos that people are posting on TikTok now, going, oh, I clicked on the link to join like an interview, and then it's just this AI bot glitching and repeating the same sentence again and again and again.
Yeah.
So then where is that human connection? And then like last month, for example, like Duolingo was always doing really well. And then the minute they said, hey, we're going to use AI to replace everybody, then everyone just decided to leave because the connection's not there anymore.
But also that people don't see that as ethical too, Jeremy. Like that's my feeling about it. The Duolingo thing, people are like, well, we're supposed to be happy that you fired your workforce.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're a workforce, so you're just basically saying, hey, as soon as your company figures out how to fire you, they will. It's not a very hopeful message for the future. Are we getting to a point where, sorry, I saw this quote. It was an amazing quote. It said, we were promised that we would get technology that would do all the dirty work, and then we could have time to write poetry and paint pictures. Instead, we've invented technology that writes poetry and paints pictures while we do all the dirty work. And it's like we have to make sure we're not doing that, because somebody still needs to buy the stuff that people are making. And if we don't have jobs because we've been replaced by AI, like it's kind of a vicious circle. But sorry to interrupt you, but I agree. But it's really about
No, but I think that's what it is, right? Like AI will be helpful, but you still need the human leader to be there to read the room, to guide everyone, to kind of group everyone together towards a shared vision.
for sure.
Mm.
Yeah, I completely agree with both points actually. It's just also like, I mean, the last time we had a conversation this big about implementing things within the workforce is when, like you said, Mark, is when the World Wide Web was invented, We had the same discussions. We were like, is it ethical? Will it replace jobs? And you know what? It will, but it'll also create just as many jobs. It will be people trained in AI, how to use it, how to get better with it as well. So I think it's like you said, Jeremy, it's really humanizing the AI element and working in collaboration with it and not looking at it as, oh, how can I replace my workforce? Perfect. So, moving on, how have workplace communication styles evolved, and what new tensions or opportunities have come with that shift?
Yeah. Well, we find that we laugh at this one, right? Okay, so like look at the three of us, right? We're three different generations. Millennial and Z, or Z if you're Canadian. Um, you know, and of course our communication styles are different. We grew up in different places in different times. Um, One of the ways I think that's really critical to measure how the differences are is the speed, right? We went from emails to chats to WhatsApps, and we've gone now to this kind of instantaneous aspect of communication. There's many good things about that. You can get answers much faster. There's many bad things about that, such as people thinking that they have a right to ask you questions and get answers instantaneously. So the the asynchronous nature of communication from the past in some ways was good, because it left you alone to do your job, and then you get to your email, and then you would answer the email. Nowadays, it's like, "Oh, don't leave me on red, bro. You know, I've got two blue check marks on your WhatsApp, so I know you read my message." You know, and for my generation, I'll tell you what, I mean, for my generation, it can feel a little like being eaten alive by piranhas. You know, you've got all these messages, and so it's like, "Just give me a minute, man," you know? And this is one of the things that I bump into in dealing with Gen Z, and a little less so with millennials, but it's a bit there too. So I think it's evolving, and we have to figure out what the protocols are for that, right? We have to figure out what the rules are that go around that kind of communication. When we first got email, you know, Sahil, you reference it with the web, but when we first got it, we would try to figure out how to put it into our business and make it make sense. Um, and we got some rules about it. You say this, you don't blind carbon copy somebody unless you're ratting them out to their boss. Like, there's certain messages, there's certain, you know, functional communications, sort of protocols around it. And the same thing is true for instantaneous messaging. And I think part of the problem is, right, this is a bit of a hobby horse of mine, but I'll do this thing where I'll say, how many people in this room know what CC and BCC stand for in an email? And, you know, most people kind of know. The younger ones won't know what the letters mean, but almost nobody in the room from millennials down has ever touched a piece of carbon paper, which is what it refers to, right? Carbon copy. And you think, okay, that's funny, and everyone's ha ha ha. Or a friend of mine said that his nephew was rummaging around some old stuff, found a floppy disk, and said, "Hey, Dad, look, it's a 3D printed save button." Because the kid had never seen a floppy and didn't know what a floppy was, and just thought that image on the word was what it was. And the reason I bring that up is because the very metaphor we're using for communicating doesn't work if the people who are using it have never sent a letter, put a postage stamp, used a carbon paper, written a memo, but yet we're using that format. And in his life, Jeremie's never written a memo like I would have at the beginning of my career 30 years ago. So I think the style of communicating is evolving, and it has to change the tools, and the tools are changing the style. And again, we have to address it. But yeah, for me, there's two things. One is the speed and the frequency of communication. It can be overwhelming for you know, I don't want to say older. I don't feel that way, but for uh, people of my generation, we have to get used to this. Is how kids. Sorry, Jeremy. This is how the kids today talk, and we gotta keep up with them. There's more of them than there are of us, and you know, they're going to replace us. So we have to keep up with them if we want to manage them. We can't force them into boxes we built 50 years ago. If that makes any sense. I don't know if it does, but um,
Yeah.
those are the tensions. The tensions are the speed and the timing and the frequency. What about you, Jeremy? How does it look
I
from
mean,
the other side of that hand that I've crossed?
Steve for sure. Steve for sure. The other thing I want to add on as well to Mark is how things resonate now with people of our generation. And sometimes when you speak to somebody, that's when you realize like sometimes the humor is quite multi-layered and you have to kind of almost deep dive 2 to 3 levels. So I was like, when I was thinking, you know, as Mark was speaking just now, I was thinking like what kind of resonates. And I remember the first time I had to explain to Mark what a laughing emoji is. Because it used to be, right, when something's funny and haha and you react, it's the one with the two tear droplets at the side. And then, you know, it came one fine day when he finally like, you know, was accustomed and familiar to it. Then I had to break the news to him and go, I think you're a bit old fashioned. Now it's the two, you know, it's the tears flowing down my cheeks because I'm laughing so hard that I'm just laughing, my tears are coming out. So just want to let you know the laugh emoji is kind of like a giveaway that you are an older person. Yeah, and then now I have to break the news to him again, being, oh, it's a kind of like the skull now, it's the skeleton. Because, you know, you laugh so hard that you're like deceased. And then I find myself having to explain like,
I just
why.
use a unicorn for everything now because
I know. Yeah, so then we find our own way. So in terms of an opportunity, I think the opportunity comes from the tension, you know, because the tension point, it's like, how do you tell your manager, how do you tell your older members who are usually in, you know, leadership roles that, hey, if you end with like 3 full stops at the end, it means you're angry, you know, because it's like, I'm okay, full stop versus I'm okay, dot, dot, dot. It feels like you're a bit passive aggressive. So then the opportunity would be the communication part. If you're able to learn and take on board and know how to communicate cross generationally, then that will put you in a very, very solid, strong position for the next few years. because that's you are
Both
like the
directions.
messenger. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it has to go in both directions. Young people also have to learn from the people whose workforce they're joining. You can't come in and go, "Hey, this is how the kids are doing it. You guys need to adapt to us." It doesn't work that way. And the analogy is because you mentioned culture, that's the analogy. If we move to another country, right? I can't just come over and go, "This is how I do it. You're gonna have to adapt to me." No, pal, this is, I live in Singapore now. I gotta get used to the Asian way and the Singapore way. And likewise, if the 3 of us all moved and started working in Zurich or something, we'd have to adapt. And the people we work with there would also learn something from us and could learn something from us. And so it's the same with generations. We have to learn from each other, because yeah. So I'm using a unicorn because I forget a skull thing. But also I don't know. Maybe I'll start a trend.
You never know. But even to add on to you as well, right? Like, because I know from his way of working, now this is not really cross generationally. Now this is more like knowing the members of your team. I know he likes to focus. So then we make our own language, I'm zoning in, I'm locked in, which means for the next hour, do not disturb me because I'm working on some high stake stuff. So for him, he would say he's zoning in. For me, if I'm feeling cheeky, I'll just put like the emoji of the scuba diver because I'm doing a deep dive now. Don't disturb me. I will call you when I come up for air.
Yeah. So there's different ways, and it'll continue. Like 15 years from now, Sahil, you'll be where I am, and Jeremy, you'll be where he is, and there'll be some Gen Alpha will be telling you that you're laughing until I'm dead at 3D emoji. Who knows what we'll be looking at then? Some floating GIF in space oh my God, it's so passe, Jeremy. You're so old. You shouldn't be using such a thing. And you'll remember me while I'm sipping a cocktail on a beach, hopefully in Thailand, fully retired. But yeah,
I will send you a holographic message.
yeah. And then last thing I'll say about the generational thing, and I realize we're taking a long time on this one, but it's really important because there are amazing records of people complaining about children, young people, and teenagers from the time of the Greeks. And the complaints are exactly the same. Kids today have no respect. They listen to rubbish music. They don't respect their elders. They're too loud. And you're like, been the same. So we've had these problems for thousands of years. This is not new. Which is like we're going to continue to have them, and that's what makes it fun for me. I don't get upset. It's like, oh, okay, I'm out of date. I'm going to try to catch up now. Keep going. It's fun.
Yeah,
Sure.
completely. Again, very, very well curated answers. I'm starting to think you guys rehearsed this just before you.
No, that's why we work well together. We agree on a lot of stuff. We argue about some stuff. Get to that later. Yeah.
I mean, I will say though, I definitely resonate more with Mark saying locked in than I do with the school bus driver emoji, Jeremy. That's the first I've definitely heard of that. So now I'm starting to feel
Scuba, as in like diving.
Oh, scuba. Okay.
That makes slightly more sense now.
Well, it makes slightly more sense. Yeah. Still. But okay. So that's the great answers on both sides. Right. So Gallup's 2023 report revealed that only 23% of employees worldwide feel engaged at work, meaning the remaining 77% are neither not engaged or actively disengaged. Why do you think so many employees feel disconnected, and what might be missing from the way companies are approaching engagement today? Sorry, I meant to say either, not neither.
Yeah. Yeah, this one for me, I think it really boils down to what's the number one reason people quit their jobs? It's their managers, right? And so the touch point between an employee at any level. So when I have a manager, so it's not just the frontline and managers, it's management. And the touch point between you and the person that's most responsible for your career at that company is the point at which culture is created. It's the point at which you understand what you're there for, how well you're doing, what's next for you, all these things. And so when you quit, people say, "Oh, I know I didn't quit. My manager was great, but I didn't see a future for myself there." Really? That's your manager's job, is to help you see a future for yourself there. "Oh, no, I quit because the money wasn't great." Really? That's a management decision, right? So
Mm.
the number one reason that people quit their jobs is managers. And so that's where engagement is taking place. So a couple of things companies should be doing is, are the managers engaged? Right? Like, look at that and really understand what drives engagement. The good news is, once you're paid at a market rate, so obviously money matters, right? But once you get paid at the same amount of money you'd make if you went to your major competitor, it no longer can matter. because nobody's going to pay me $1 million to go do that thing over there. So as long as I'm pretty much in the zone for whatever I do, there's not much else we can do with money. So what else is there? And so we look at relationship to manager, workload, the environment that they work in, whether it's the people environment, like whether it's toxic or any of those things, but also the physical environment. Do I enjoy the space I have to work in? Am I dragged into the office needlessly? Could I really do this 2 days a week from home? All of these different questions then become how we create engagement. And then, just again, because I got laid off or fired or downsized or retrenched or whatever damn word we're using this week for getting rid of people when you think you can't afford them anymore, twice before I was 32. So I've been through that, dot-com bust. I was there for the first one. And so when you've been through that, that's also where engagement comes in. How companies do two things: when and how they get rid of people when they feel they have to. That creates an engagement problem for the people that don't get fired. How you treated my best work buddy when you got rid of him is going to impact how engaged I am or what I think about it here, or how safe I feel here, or whether I'm off looking for a new job because I think I might be next. So getting rid of people when and how people are treated is one particular way to really shift that. So I think employees feel disconnected because they're disconnected from the reality of the business. They don't see themselves as part of the business. Ask somebody what business they're in. Do they mention the kind of business the company's in, or do they mention their profession? So do they say I'm in IT, or do they say I work for Singapore Airlines, right? As an IT person, right? Like that's the difference. Or like, do they see themselves as part of the organization? Are they literally engaged? Because think about it. It's like getting married. If you get engaged to somebody, both of you get engaged to each other. If only one of you is engaged, that's called stalking, and it's weird. If both of you are disengaged, then you're not going to get married. So it really is a two-sided relationship. For the younger people, I don't know, Jeremy, what do you think? Why do you think your generation feels disconnected? If you think they do,
Just one word: purpose. I think that sums up kind of what the younger generation is feeling: purpose. Because a lot of times, a lot of the engagement efforts feel a little performative. Like I'm not speaking for everyone in my generation, but from what I've seen, from what I observe, we don't really care so much about, the pizza party at the end and stuff like that. We just want to know that we are we have a purpose in the company. If I remember, I read like an article from Forbes earlier on this year, something about like 40% of people, they were 40% more likely. People were 40% more likely to stay in their job if they felt like the company had a purpose. It was purpose driven. And I think every company is purpose driven. It's just that those companies that were seen as not purpose driven just didn't do a good job in communicating to their employees what the purpose is. And I think that's why employees just become disengaged, because they see it as, oh, if I don't show up so much, or if I don't give so much for one day, what's it going to matter? Because I can't see what's it going to lead to, and then that's how it compounds moving forward. I've been in organizations where, you don't really get as clear communication on what the purpose is. And then in your performance appraisal, they would say things because they've always said it that way, which is you have to be more valuable. And then you kind of want to look back at them and go, how do I be more valuable? Because I don't know which direction you want to go to be more valuable. What's the purpose? So
we're back to communication again.
Back to communication.
I mean, that's like, I agree with both points, exactly that. I mean, like they say, people quit people don't quit jobs. And I think that's that break in that communication and feeling that not having that purpose to be in that role. And I think because you're not going to be inspired by CEO or director level. They're not the people that you interact with on a daily basis. It's the person that you see every single day or speak to, communicate with every day will be the reason that you stay. But yeah.
Or the reason you quit and how hard you work when you're there.
Also true. Amazing. Right. Okay. So in today's increasingly transient job market, what does loyalty really look like from both the employees and employers' perspective?
Jeremy, what do you think?
All right. loyalty is just not about, loyalty isn't about period anymore. It's about quality. That's how the younger generation is seeing it. Gone are the days where, you stay with a company for 30 years and it's seen as like a badge of honor. Because now it's, as long as I'm with you at this moment in time, I will give everything I've got and I will give you the most value I can offer. We have seen before in the older generation, for example, like in Japan, there's that thing of like, you have to be at your desk and you can't leave until your manager leaves. And then the manager can't leave because their manager hasn't left yet for the day. And so everyone is just sitting there showing themselves work, like showing themselves at the desk, but they've done with all their work. And so that's the same thing. The younger generation kind of sees through that and go, why are we, it's not about how long it is anymore. It's about, if you have me for these 2 years, I will give you everything for these 2 years. If you have me for these 5 years, I will give you everything for these 5 years. It's about the present moment.
Yeah, somebody said that to me about a few years ago when I used to work and live in Hong Kong. I was based there, and there was a millennial, and they said to us, because this is probably about over 10 years ago, so it was before Gen Z had really entered the workforce in any numbers. And that's exactly what he said, right, Jeremy? He said, like, when I'm working for you, I'm yours. That's what loyalty is. He said, when I'm not working, I'll never betray your secrets. I'll do everything you want, and then I'm going to go. And this was a guy who was in the hotel business. And so he said, oh, I've worked for a big chain like a Hilton or one of those. I've worked for a luxury chain, right? So like a Mandarin or a Peninsula. He said, my next job is going to be, and he named the resort company he's going to go work for. He goes, and then after that, I want to do like a European chateau style. And it was like he was collecting, this is a very Canadian reference, but collecting hockey cards. I want one of those are Pokemons. Okay, let's use a more on point reference. But he was collecting them. And in his mind, that wasn't disloyal. It was like, no, he loved his job. He loved what he was doing. He loved the people, and he wanted all those different experiences. So his loyalty was, as Jeremy just said, in that moment. Um, and I think that's kind of a really interesting way to look at, um, what can we do then to make people want to stay in our organizations? It's a challenge, right? It's a gauntlet that's been thrown down to management. And here's the thing, right? We can blame the young people. We can go, oh, these young people are job hoppers. They're just like every 5 minutes changing a job. But I looked at some statistics for Singapore, where I work at the moment, and there's a 25%, or about 22% drop in tenure, the length of tenure, from 10 years ago. Right? And it looks like, oh, that's the average. It's because the kids leave, and so the old people stay, and so the average is 20. It's like, no, 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 that's across the board. So millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, everybody, we're all leaving jobs about 20 to 25% faster. We're spending 25% less time there. So if you looked at, for example, I'm 55, so I looked at the age group which included me, and it said currently 3.8 years. If I went back 10 years and looked at 45-year-olds, which was what I was back then, it was like 4.2. So we're all doing that. So there's two things going. One is to acknowledge it and just to adapt to that's how people are going. And then the second thing is, yeah, to work hard on, well, what would make me want to stay here? And like Sahil, you said, people quit people. So imagine I've got an opportunity to jump to another company, but it's an unknown quantity. But I really love this company. I love the vibe here. I love the people that I get to work with. They pay pretty well and I get treated well. Da, da, da. That's how you become the kind of place that breaks that habit. Look, you're still gonna lose them. There's very few 30-year careers, but then again, most companies don't want you to stay 30 years. They're gonna retrench and change and do different things. So it's more like, yeah, it's a limited term, so let's have the best limited term we can. And yes, and we can push those numbers up. Because if you think about it, if the average tenure was 3.8 years and you could move that to 3.9 or 4.0, I think that's not a lot. But anyone who's in HR knows, okay, just multiply that extra 10 or 15% by how many employees you have. And they know how much it costs to replace employees. They know how much the entire process costs, and like, carry the one. And you get a number that if you could increase the tenure of your employees by 10%, that's a staggering savings. That's a hard number to come to because we don't have to write a check for the number of people who leave our office or leave our employment. But HR people, you know what I'm talking about, right? You know how to make that calculation, even at a very conservative, 6 months worth of the salary is what it costs to replace a person. Now imagine if you have 1,000 employees and you can reduce by 10% the amount of people who are leaving every year. That's an amazing amount of money. And so there's a real economic incentive for companies to create an environment inside of which you buck the trend. And you do that through management, you do that through culture, you do that through engagement, all of the things we've been talking about. So what does loyalty look like? Same thing it always did. Treating people really, really well and making your company the kind of place that people want to stay at. And we're working with different outside factors now.
I think valid on both points. Like Jeremy said, it's people are job hopping now. That loyalty 20, 30 years is no longer there. And it's funny that you both mentioned both things because I think it also varies regionally. Like at my time in the UK, people did stay at companies a little bit longer. They preferred that stability. But I think as you move down the generations, that culture also shifts. It's about growing and making sure that you're growing. I'm going back to your previous point, Jeremy, purpose, right? If you're stagnating, the best thing to do is to obviously move up or change things up. Really, really good. Really good to see both sides of both perspectives, to be honest. So yeah.
And it's been fun, right? Because the CEO of the company we work for, so we're Proactive Management Asia, so we're the APAC wing with our trainers and other folks. And the CEO of Proactive in Germany, which is where our headquarters is a millennial. So we're just like this call here. It's like millennial, Gen X, Gen Z, and so we have these conversations as well. And we end up doing the goofiest stuff. Like the CEO was in town recently, and Jeremy just posted this online, and it's very funny. So right now talking about AI, there's an AI train where you upload a picture and you say, "Hey, make me a Muppet or make me into a Lego character."
Yeah.
So we did this picture of the three of us and we made it into Muppets. So there's these three Muppets, literal, well, let's not any trademark infringement. A Muppet-like puppet character walking through Chinatown in Singapore. It's really quite adorable. And I'm thinking, that is not the workplace or the workforce that I joined, 30 years ago when I left uni. And it's quite amusing to me, like both the conservativeness and the staidness and the, uptightness that would have been back then versus now, and just also the technology that allows us to do that in 3 minutes. So anyway, the generational divide is a fun conversation for us as well.
Definitely. I'd definitely say so. And obviously being sat in the middle as a millennial, you kind of resonate with both sides. And I think that's important because I think you're trained initially by, your Gen X or whoever comes before the baby boomers. And then you build those habits, but then obviously adaptability again. And you're kind of adapting with Gen Z as well. So you kind of playing devil's advocate, but also kind of also going with the flow because you kind of have to mature. Like you said yourself, your CEO is a millennial, so he will give into both sides of the trends because I think that's what the cultures that are inbuilt within, working into the working culture.
Yeah. And everybody's got something of value. And right now, the okay boomer, and it's easy to dismiss, but I think we could always learn something based on what they went through. If we really seek to understand, and likewise to look at the millennials and look at the Gen Z and go, what can these guys teach me? If I'm arrogant and think I can't learn from anybody younger than me, then I'm dead. I'm a dinosaur. But if your generations act like you can't learn anything from me or from the boomers, then you're like orphans in the sense like, well, then you're walking around with lacking of knowledge because there's a lot of stuff. Yeah, we've made mistakes. We're going to continue to, but you can still look and go, oh yeah, they actually solved that problem for themselves. But so what can I learn? Like resilience as an example, right? I think, the older you get, the more resilience you generate inside yourself because you see adversity, you experience it personally, professionally, in other ways. And then also generational resilience. Like we've been through some downturns. So if we're going into an economic downturn, it seems to be we're doing something right now. It's easy for the younger generations to panic a little bit. It's like, okay, yes, it may suck. It could suck on a whole scale we've never seen. But the millennial, you're nodding because you're like, man, I've been through these three downturns, and then I'm going, yeah, those three plus another three or four more for me. And the boomers, my mom is a boomer. She's who I'm staying with right now. And we all go, oh, wow, at least you didn't go through, that one. And so we can learn from each other. We can go, how did you go through that? How did you keep the business going? How did you pivot? How did you do what was necessary to, sustain what you needed to when the dot-com bubble burst or 2008 happened or 9/11 happened, if we want to go back that far. So, I think there's a lot to learn intergenerationally. And when we approach it from that perspective, it's more fun as well. It's more enjoyable. as opposed to just sitting over here going, "Oh, kids today," or you guys sitting around going, "Oh, old people, Jesus." Like, instead of that, let's just all go out for a beer kind of or a cup of coffee and figure out what can we get from each other. Yeah.
I think it's having that conversation. It's definitely having that conversation for sure. Like, for example, hopefully never again, and fingers crossed it never happens, but let's say your Gen Alpha has to go through a pandemic workforce. Now, that's not that any of us would ever want that, but we know exactly.
Knock on wood, right? Yeah.
Definitely not something we'd ever like to encounter again, knowing how it went the first time round. But it's things we deal with. We have contingencies now.
Mm.
Like you said, like Jeremy will have a contingency for something that'll come up within the next year, or when, like you said, where we're headed in an economic downturn, that'll be an experience under his belt that he'll have for the next generation. So on and so forth.
Yeah, exactly, and it's good war stories, and it's that interconnection between the generations helps, right? Because once we get underneath it, it's like the cultural thing. When we talk about intercultural management and leadership, I'm a white guy living in Asia. I was born in Ireland. I grew up in Canada. I moved to Hong Kong. I live in Singapore. I train all over Asia. So the culture thing really pops up and as another one. And it's the same thing. Like we have to open ourselves up and relate to each other and learn from each other. No one group of people has all of the answers. So when we do that, we sort of start to see that fundamentally people are the same and they want the same. They need the same. Like every employee wants the same thing. We may express it differently based on our age or our culture, but we all want the same things. We want a good job. We want our bosses to notice what we're doing and congratulate us when we're doing well and guide us when we're not doing well and da, da, da. We want all the same stuff. We just might want it in a different kind of language based on where we come from, our culture, our heritage, our religion, our age, our whatever generational impacts and stuff like that. And when we get to that level, then life becomes a little bit more kind of workable. Well, that's a lot of what we do. I mean, we teach leadership. We're teaching people that. Like, yes, we'll teach you how to do a performance appraisal. We'll give you the technical skills, but we need you to get underneath that and go, well, why are you doing a performance appraisal? What's the function of that beyond ticking some boxes for HR? Why does HR need you to do this? Why is it important to the company? Why is it important to the individual? And then people go, oh, okay, I get it. So it's important stuff.
Perfect. Right. And that was an interesting little segue. Definitely in the trouble. Definitely worth it. Definitely worth it, I would say.
Yeah.
But jumping back in, how do people build visibility, credibility, or influence in a workplace where they're not physically present every day?
Well, I think it's a lot of what we've been talking. I would say it's a lot of what we've been talking about, which is building relationships with people, communicating well, ensuring your communication makes sense and is resonating with people, right? So for Jeremy and I'm often on the road. I am now. I will be till the end of the month. We need to communicate frequently, right? So it's up to him to build his presence with me, and me with him. I'm not saying it's one way, but in terms of how he communicates to me, no, he's going to be sending me a note at the end of his day, which is the beginning of my day. So he bullets it, and he's like, needs action, doesn't need action, just FYI, whatever it is. But he builds that presence by a consistency and a clarity. And in the time we've been working together, he understands how my brain works, and so he communicates in a way that which is a feat in and of itself. But he communicates in a way that's most likely going to get him the response he needs, right? Like, he could talk to me the way he wants to talk to me, but that's great, but that's not gonna work. So he is adapted, so he communicates to me in a way that works, and I can go, "Yes, no, yes, do this, don't do that, I'll get that to you, boom, boom, boom." So, that's how he creates a presence, right? And is how we communicate to each other, how we interact with each other. Um, those are a couple of quick things that I'd say, and then the last piece would be thinking about our reputation. One of the word that pops up in our work a lot is conscious. We talk about our conscious personal leadership style and stuff. But the word conscious, or another word for that, is deliberate. So be deliberate. If you want to create an influence or presence in your workplace, whether it's physical or virtual, be thoughtful and deliberate and conscious about it. What is the reputation you want? Who are the people you need or want that reputation with? What is the best way to communicate to them or to interact, whether it's in person or online, and that's going to generate in their minds the impression you're trying to do? So it doesn't happen accidentally. What it actually does happen accidentally most of the time, but it's better when you're not accidental about it. So how do people build visibility, credibility, stuff like that? Show up, do the work, communicate well, and be really deliberate and conscious in creating for yourself the reputation. So you want to be seen as future management material and be reliable. Do what you said you would do, meet your deadlines, communicate your challenges. If you have a problem, go to your boss, not just with the challenge, but with a possible solution. I can't get this done this way. How about that? Here's an alternative. Like things like that people will respond to, and that's not even generational. That's just any manager in the world doesn't want to just be confronted with problems. So that's what I'd say. Be conscious about it, think about it, and generate it.
Mm.
What about
I
you,
think
Jeremy? What do you think?
Mark has kind of said a little bit similar to what I'm gonna say, just in a different kind of shading. So for me, it's intentionality. What's the intent? Because now, especially in the digital age, there's so many ways to communicate, and we are also not in person every single time. It's a Teams call, it's a message, it's emoji, it's a Slack message, all these different things. So really having, what is the intent? Every communication, every time you communicate, that interaction has to count. And so for me, I use a lot of frameworks. So for me, like when I speak to anyone peer to peer, I always use the FORM framework, FORM. So F is friends and family, O is occupation, R is recreation, M is motivation. Of course, we're working the same organization. I don't need to bring up occupation. So it's like, hey, how's your brother? How's your sister? Your siblings, friends, family. Then you move into recreation. Like, hey, so I heard you're doing golf this Sunday, or you're gonna go and try to learn cha-cha, on Saturday night and try to pick up a few moves along the way. And then motivation, which is like, hey, what's your North Star? What really grinds your gears? What motivates you? And then if you remember that, it's then easier to tweak your message every time you speak to these people. Then it's easier to get what you want. It's easier to resonate with them. It's the same way as well. Like if I'm speaking to Mark, who I report to, it's going to be different if I speak to a trainer, because the trainer doesn't need to know the finance numbers. They don't need to know the financials. They just need to know, what am I training? Versus if I speak to someone in marketing, it's more like, what am I posting? So it's knowing when to keep your mouth shut, knowing how to, there's value in what is being said, but also there's value in what's not being said. And that's how you really cut through the noise. Going back to what Mark has said as well, I use a lot, especially when I speak to leadership team, um, anyone from the Europe side as well, the bluff model. So that one,
You got
the
so many models, man. I love it.
I just that's how it worked for me. Like that just helps keeps me aligned.
And
The bluff model is, they call it what, bottom line upfront. And so it's basically, it's military jargon. So that's how, apparently, I'm not sure. I think they still use it now. US military, that's how they used to communicate. So don't give all the context, and then the action point is exactly what Mark has said. Switch it around. Say, I need you to be here at this time, and then only I bring out the context. So that if Mark is running out of time and he can't read the full message, at least the important part has gotten to him already. So that's how I've been phrasing my messages to him, being like, hey, I need your approval, I need your sign off here. And then the other things are like updates you can read during your own time, or like, we have a 2-week runway, it's not as important. But as we move on, of course, the things will shift. That's my way of doing it.
Amazing parts all around. So that's all the time we really have. I just wanted to add in, do you guys have any closing comments? Anything you'd like to add in?
Hmm.
and for my last thing I'd say is I like to think that all of like being in a company, being a manager, being a leader boils down to 5 questions. If we answer these 5 questions ongoingly, day by day, minute by minute with the people who work for us, we will be good managers, and it'll answer a lot of the stuff we're talking about. What am I doing? So what's my job? What am I supposed to be doing? What does it look like when my job is being done well? So what am I doing? Is my job, what am I doing? Well, how's it let me start that one again. So edit that bit out. So I would boil it down to 4 questions, or 5 questions if you want. So the first question is, what am I supposed to be doing? So managers have to help people understand what their job is. How does it look when my job is being done well? So standards, keep them on track for standards, and how well they're doing. The third question is, how am I doing? So that's feedback, ongoing, day by day, week by week, month by month feedback. on how close they're coming to those standards or if they're exceeding them. And then what could I do better? And that's the growth question. So answer those 4 questions. What's my job? What does it look like when it's done well? How am I doing? And what could I do better? And the 5th question is the development one. What's next for me? So we answer those 4.5 or 5 questions. That's really what all of this boils down to. That's how we create engagement. It's how we create that intentionality. It's how we grow younger generations and make them into the leaders that we need them to be. I think it's fun though. I think we're in a very difficult, very challenging time, but I think we could really have fun with this and learn our way through it. So thanks for the time today. Thanks for having this on. It's been fun for me.
For me, it's 2 things. It's storytelling, and it's remembering the fact that we are all humans at the end of the day. Because if we look at it like, generations ago, people, they haven't invented language. They're in the cave, for example, but they still draw pictures to tell the story because they want to connect with other humans. And I think as we move over the next few years, that's going to be very important because everyone talks about AI, digital tools, but ultimately you still need to speak to a human at the end of the line. So that helps to, in my opinion, breaks down the cross-generational barrier. Yes, they are your leader, but ultimately they are human. They want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be understood. And if you can find a way to tell your story, that will also help you as well to make them feel understood, but make yourself be more visible, more credible, going back to what we said before, in their eyes. So that will really help bridge the gap.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you both so much. Thanks so
My
much,
pleasure.
folks, for tuning in today. You've heard it here live and direct. That is all the time we have, unfortunately, on today's session. But a huge thank you to the audience, and a huge thank you to Mark and Jeremy for really giving us those insights on multi-generational workforces and really digging into that nitty-gritty that we're all looking for. So I appreciate both your times. Hopefully we'll let you log off now, Jeremy, and pack your things away and head home. And Mark, have a great day ahead.
Thank you guys. Thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye, guys.